Thank you for joining us today for this Trail Runners Association of Hong Kong interview. I'm very pleased to be joined by two gentlemen, John Ellis and Vlad Ixel, both of which are Australians who have spent most of your running careers in Hong Kong. John obviously still in Hong Kong and very active with track, and Vlad now living back in Western Australia but running around the world. So exciting times for both of you. You've both been selected to represent Australia in the World Mountain and Trail Running Championships, which is happening in Thailand next week. So it must be very exciting for both of you. How are your preparations going?
I'll let you go first, Vlad.
Yeah, I'm obviously super excited. I've known John for probably a good 8 years, so it's nice to be on the same team together. Um, yeah, I've kind of had some good running this year, but did few races in the US that didn't go 100%. I'm kind of blaming it on the altitude in those two races. So I got an altitude tent, which is behind me now. So hopefully, you know, I'll be fit enough for that Thailand race. But yeah, trying to get ready for it and excited to be part of the event.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm really excited to be on the same team as Vlad. I think Vlad's been in the Australian team a few times before. This is the first time for me. I think I probably would have preferred the 80K, but as it is, we had a pretty good 80K. I'm in the 40K, so in the last 6 weeks, I've had to try and do a few workouts, try and get a bit of speed and lose a little bit of weight. But I'm excited. I think we were talking before the call that you always want a little bit more time. You're never quite ready, but it's going to be exciting, and I think yeah, can't wait to to hit that starting line.
Awesome. So did you guys, how far ahead did you guys have an idea of this? It seems you're both now kind of rushing to get your preparations in. Is this something that you thought might happen, or has it kind of been sprung on you a little bit? And representing Australia, is this something you had ever thought would happen in trail running, considering normally when you're in a race, you're competing for yourself?
I think obviously, I mean, I was told a pretty few days, I guess, after John, that was mid-September. Probably realistically, probably a little bit rushed if you had any other plans of races. So yeah, like John said, trying to like squeeze in some key workouts specific for that race for me. That was trying to get a bit of HIIT training. Um, Somehow the weather in Perth has been a lot cooler than usual, so I've been trying to do a couple of runs with like long sleeves jumpers and stuff like that. So trying to fit that in. Few treadmill runs. Like I've been to the gym, like on the treadmill, hiking up with a jumper. That looks pretty funny. Um, so I don't think it was like a crazy amount of time, but I think everybody are in a similar boat because of how this race has been moved dates so many times, and I think it hasn't been really properly organized. And Athletics Australia took it on board for the first time, which is also a tiny bit messy. Um, but I think that obviously trail running, it's a growing sport, and when you have different bodies kind of taking part of in organizing it, some things will take a while till they kind of smooth out. So I think we're in the process of that. So I think within a few years it will be at a higher level, but right now it's feels a little bit messy. And then coming to your second questions, I never thought that I would represent Australia in anything. I started running a bit late in life, so I never thought I would. So, being a part of those events is yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it's probably in the same boat as Vlad. It would have been nice to have another month. I guess specifically being in Hong Kong, we haven't had races, for the best part of 2.5 years, and I think other countries were sort of had, were in the middle of their trail seasons, and we were in smack bang in the middle of our off season. So, John was pretty unfit, pretty fat when he got the call up. And to be honest, I wasn't expecting to get it either because we haven't had the races and I haven't, been able to travel overseas. My ITRA scores just decayed over time. And so I'm sending this application saying, look, can I go in the team? I haven't really done any races for 2.5 years. My ITRA score is not very good anymore. You haven't heard of me, but can I? So yeah, I wasn't expecting it. I guess I had some Asian experience. Won a couple of races in northern Thailand, which I guess counted. I can run in heat, I can run in humidity. But yeah, it would have been nice to have an extra month, but here we are, and we can do what we can do. I mean, a question for Vlad, because you've represented Australia a few times before. What's this? This is your third or fourth time now, and I guess almost stepping back because you were born in Odessa in Ukraine. Was there a point in your career where you had to make that decision? Am I going to represent Australia or represent Ukraine?
Yeah, I've done two races and a sky running race, so I guess that doesn't really count as representing Australia. But yeah, for the trail running, I did it twice. I moved to Australia when I was 13 and a half, so I don't even have a Ukrainian citizenship. I don't have, much to do with Ukraine anymore. I actually left Ukraine when I was 4. Um, so I don't think there was ever an option. I don't know if I guess technically I could get a passport if I go and try and get it. Not that I would really want to. Um, you know, I've been in Australia for, yeah, over 20 years. So I feel fairly Australian. I actually feel Australian when I'm not in Australia, but when I'm in
Yep.
Australia, I don't really feel Australian, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it would be nice to see the Ukrainian team there, even though I only speak Russian. And I think they're like, because where I was born in Odessa, that's like a Russian speaking city. Still is,
Mhm.
still today. I was there in
Yeah.
2019, actually. Um, so it'd be weird. It would be interesting to see the team. I'm sure that they won't be speaking Russian anymore. So I might try and have a chat with them in Russian, but like straight away say, "Hey, I'm from Ukraine." Uh,
Yeah.
and see, yeah, and kind of get their kind of insights on how things are there and how things are with the running and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Actually, one of the guys you might meet is a guy called Bogdan Onashenko, who actually lives in Hong Kong, and he'll be representing the Ukrainian team, I think, for the third time this year.
oh wow,
So another Hong Kong connection.
yeah. I mean, it's good to see so many Hong Kong runners representing different countries, right? It's a shame Hong Kong couldn't fill a whole team because I think that they could have quite easily. The good thing about Australia, which I saw an improvement, is a bigger team.
Mm.
So the last World Champs that I did, I was the only male. The year before, there was only 3 of us. So it's nice to see that we have, for the trail running, um, we have a pretty full team, for
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's maybe a missed opportunity for Hong Kong, given the way the scoring works, and you need three runners, at least three runners in an event to make the country rankings. And I guess for whatever reason, we're only sending, I guess, a maximum of two in any particular event. So unfortunately, won't score in the rankings.
Yeah, and I mean, for a country like Hong Kong, where trail running is so big and it is, you get to see it on TV every now and then, and it is in the newspaper, and a lot of people are hiking. I thought they would be really pushing to have a full team because they definitely have enough good runners and
Yeah,
enough talent. And, there's even, you can actually send runners even if they don't have ranking, but I'm not really
yeah,
sure. Hopefully, we'll get better soon. Like, I feel like things are getting better overall, and this world champs is getting a bit more notice. Um, and like to be honest, like I think that within 10 years, trail running might be in the Olympics. So then they might take it a bit more serious in funding, in how much they do in those World Cup event, World Championships events.
yeah. Agreed, agreed.
There are a
And I
lot
think
of Hong Kong.
it take a while as well for Australia. Like I think that Australia is really lacking behind the US and the UK. And I spoke with Joe Gray a few weeks ago when I was in the US, and the amount of support and funding that they have as athletes, in the trail running races, in the trail running world championships, are like day and night compared to what we're doing in Australia. So for us, it's a self-supported adventure. They're not. I guess maybe a lot of runners didn't apply because it's a self-funded, um,
Mm.
trip where we have also quite a lot of good athletes in Australia that would have made the team. But maybe if there was a bit more support from the governing bodies. But yeah.
I think what one thing which happened in Hong Kong is after Hong Kong did well in the Olympics last year in different sports that got the Hong Kong government's attention. So if trail running does become an Olympic sport, then you'd think it'd be much more on the radar. But yeah, a lot of Hong
Yeah,
Kong
I
based.
mean, from sorry to cut you there. From what I heard, skimo is going to be in the next Winter Olympics.
Nice.
So, like, I feel like we're one step behind skimo. So who knows? Maybe 28 trail running could be in the Olympics.
Here's hoping. So yeah, there are a lot of
Yeah,
Hong
hope.
Kong-based athletes in the world champs. So you've mentioned one representing Ukraine. There's John Rayanifa, Stingray representing Philippines, Esther Tselag representing Hungary. It's obviously the Hong Kong team. Jeff Campbell
Jeff
representing.
Campbell, yeah.
So who are you, is there anyone in particular you're looking out for? Who do you think will go particularly well? And is wanting to get one up on your mates part of the motivation here as well? Maybe that's a question
I
for
mean, I'm
John.
happy to start if
Yeah,
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 like I mean, I think I think Vlad's going to go pretty well here. He's had a couple of good races in Europe earlier this year. I mean, I saw your sort of Mozart sort of 21K. You sort of had an ITRA score of 850, which was like a ridiculously strong run. So I've been following him on Strava and seeing him crank up the Ks. And Vlad's just he's always an amazing competitor. So I think you got to look out for Vlad. And then I think probably Esther. She's just come off fifth at UTMB. I think there's maybe some of the other Hong Kong athletes, Stingray, Jeff. I mean, I think this year the weather's going to be a real factor. We have a lot of these elite sort of professionals coming in from Europe, for example, or North America. Some of them about to go into a ski season, and I'm not sure they'll necessarily handle the humidity as well. And that could be a real X factor, I think, in the last 20 or 30K, especially in the 80K. So I think all of those runners, sort of Vlad, Jeff, Esther, Stingray, Chung obviously, could really surprise people, and really sort of punch above their weight given the weather.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I wish I would have spent a few weeks in Hong Kong before this race. Definitely, running in Perth is a lot different. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess it does make a difference that I had a couple of good years in Hong Kong, training in the heat and the humidity. But yeah, I think that Jeff could do really well. He's a super, super talented runner. Even though I guess it's been like a bit of a last minute build up for him as well. Is super, super talented. So I think that he could do really well. And like you said, some of the Europeans are coming to the end of their season. They don't really like the heat and the humidity anyway. So yeah, there could be some surprises in that race. But the field is like super deep. I think like with every year,
Mm.
those world champs are getting tougher and tougher. I mean, I had a look at the start list of the 80K. It feels like few people have dropped from the 80K to the 40K. Um, so the 80K is probably going to be a tiny bit less competitive than the 40K. But yeah, both races are really, really competitive in the male side.
Yeah, and actually, you're right because I think Stingray and Jeff were both doing the 80K originally, and they both dropped down to the 40. I think Jeff with the Canadian team, they one of the 40K runners had to pull out. They wanted to have at least three runners, and so Jeff volunteered to do the 40K instead.
Yeah, and also John Alban,
Oh yeah,
from the
yep.
UK, who is he's got a good chance of winning the 80K or the 40K. So he's dropped down. Um, yeah, so there's obviously a lot of good runners in both distances, but the 40K will be pretty quick. I mean, from the few races that I did in Europe, where there's a lot of good runners, from the Golden Trail Series races that I did, it's a quick start, and it kind of gives
Mm.
you a bit of a reality check where you're running hard and there's 30 or 40 people in front of you, straight away. So I feel like that's going to be the experience in this upcoming race as well, where it's going to be so many good runners. The pace at the start is just going to be super hot, and you look up and you're probably going to be in the mid 40s or 50s, position wise, and then hopefully you can work your way up. Um, But
I was going
yeah,
to say, like maybe strategy wise, yeah. How do you think about it? Because looking at the 40K course, I think we've got 2Ks coming out of the expo center. It's fairly flat, and then we hit this monster hill, which I don't know if you've seen any of the videos going around, but 6Ks. I think we climbed 1,300 meters. Looks really steep. Maybe only the top runners are going to be sort of running parts of it. But yeah, how do you need to sort of get into a good position at the start? Do you want to go out faster, or do you want to try and save some legs for maybe that second big hill? It's kind of a hard one.
I think it really depends on the weather. So if it is a hot, humid day, personally, I would take it really easy on that first hill. Otherwise, if you hit lactic in that first hill, it'll be a pretty long day.
Yeah,
Um, and then also kind of putting your ego a little bit aside, I guess, and kind of going, all right, well, maybe I win some races in Australia or in Asia, but this is the world champs, and I might not be leading or be in the top five straight away. I have to kind of really work hard and slowly throughout the race. So I think if it is a hot, humid day, personally, I would take it a bit easier on the first climb, and then try and kind of roll through the more runnable bits, or like the downhills. And
mhm,
because I mean, I've done it so many times where I went to Europe, won a lot of races in Asia, go to Europe with the same mentality that, oh, I should be in the lead, um, start way too hard and then blow up. And
yep,
I think I've kind of obviously, I'm getting better at that, and at kind of realizing that this is a different level. Runners, are at a higher level, and you gotta kind of like take it a bit easier and kind of be realistic of where you are compared to them.
yep,
And sometimes that means sitting at 30th place for the first 10K, and then hopefully slowly moving up the field, which is different obviously when you race in Australia or in Asia, where there might be only 5 6 good runners. In those competitive races in Europe, there's 30 of them, 40 of them, um,
yeah.
which I
Because
feel,
really, I guess
yeah, it's going to
running
be
running
insane.
your own race, whatever's going to be the best way for you to get the best time, rather than trying to race anyone specifically or trying to stay in some lead pack just for the sake of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a mentality. Like, I think when you do really well, like, you run the whole season in Hong Kong, and, you know, the level is not super high. So even if you have a few bad days, a few bad races, you're up there, but then you go to Europe, and, it's a real kind of like a reality check of like, hey, you're not that good. Like,
Mhm.
those guys are really,
Yeah,
really quick. Like, when even the two races in the US, I finished 30 minutes behind the leader, and it's a good reality check that those guys are really, really good. So just have to be smart and not expect to be at the front straight away,
yeah,
especially with the heat and the humidity. Because if you do over push where you should be, you're going to end up walking half of this race. So yeah, it's going to be, I think, a slow start.
yep, yeah. Although I don't know, I look at that field and it looks so strong, and whenever I see these just amazing fields where you've got this really sort of fast pointy end, I always feel like the races just start really quick because there's always two or three sort of hares who just their strategy is to go out hard and just try and hold on to it. And so I just feel that there might be maybe that sort of start drags a bit of a leading pack, and maybe there could be a bit of carnage towards the end. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you obviously personally, as a runner, I've seen you run a lot smarter where you come through the back. Um, I don't know. Personally, I have been pushing, trying to push straight from the beginning. But like you said, yeah, I think that they're going to be a fast lead pack. This is the world champs. They've been waiting for this race for 2.5 years.
Yep,
It's going to be a road start, so the first K, the leading guys are going to be going at 3 minute pace.
3 minutes. Yeah,
Climbing that hill very, very quickly because they're fresh. But then again, it's only 37K. If it was
yeah,
50K, I think there will be a lot more blow ups. That 37K, with a big downhill at the end, that's only really a 30K race. Um, so yeah,
yeah,
it's a tough one. Like, you don't want to leave, because I mean, if you really kind of hold back for the first 10K, you don't have too much time to catch up as well.
yeah, yep,
And
yeah, absolutely.
somebody blowing up, a good runner blowing up, and going, let's say, from 4-minute pace to 5-minute pace, but he's already got 20 minutes on you. I mean, it'll be
Yeah,
pretty
you're not
hard
going
to
to get that
catch up.
back.
Well, yeah. So,
Yeah, yep.
um, I think, yeah, I think you just have to kind of see what the weather's going to do. And if it's like really a 33-degree day with 80% humidity, then a lot of people blow up. But if it's 27 with 50% humidity, they might not blow up as
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. And you sort of mentioned before that, yeah, you wish that Perth was a little bit warmer at the moment. I guess on top of that, you probably wish it probably had a few more hills. I'm originally from Perth, and I sort of grew up in Beckenham, which was in the foothills, and they're called foothills because they weren't very big. But yeah, how do you think about just trying to get your elevation training in?
So, I mean, I think something that since I left Hong Kong, so while I was in Hong Kong, my kind of training was just a lot of easy long runs. I pretty much would try and aim to do between an hour to 2 hours a day on the trails, and it was fun. Once I got back to Perth, I started training with Matthew Ramson, who is a 3:35 1,500 meter runner.
Wow,
So yeah, like 28 minutes for 10K.
wow.
So I pretty much do all my runs with him, like all my easy runs, all the track sessions. So my
That
training,
didn't sound very easy.
I think it wasn't in the beginning. So
Yep.
doing track in the beginning, like 2 years ago when I started that track sessions, it wasn't easy, but then, it kind of got easy as your body gets used to it. Um, but I feel like if you're fit, you're fit. And you don't need as much, specific training for a trail race that is a bit shorter. Um, so like even going to Europe, I didn't do too much trail running because there isn't too much here in Perth. But I was doing track every week. I was doing threshold every week, and I was running 140K every week. And even the easy runs are like at 4:10 pace, 4 or 5 pace. So a lot of effort in the training, um,
Yep.
not too much specific work. And then leading up to the US, so I went to the US a few weeks ago to do Pikes Peak, which is a half marathon uphill race. And I changed all my training for that. So I did a lot of treadmill runs, a lot of like 1.5 hour climbs on the treadmill, really slow. And I got there and I wasn't feeling as strong as while I was training at kind of a high intensity,
Okay. Yep.
if that makes sense. A lot more impact on the legs. I mean, when you are running fast on the roads, that impact on the legs, I think, is a bit similar to like running fast downhill.
Yeah.
And then, if you fit, you should do okay on the uphills. So I'll give you an example. Like the guys that I train with are all sub 14-minute 5K runners. They don't do any uphill work, but if we try and race up an uphill, they would obviously beat me because they're just
Mhm.
fitter than me. The VO2 max is higher, they're stronger. So I think that I feel like I could get away for like shorter races by doing that kind of training and then trying to do one trail run a week, which usually that's what I've been doing.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. And I guess in terms of, you were in Hong Kong for, golly, like 5 or 6 years. I think you sort of kind of moved back to Australia, was it 2019, 2020? And I mean, how do you find, when you look back on the Hong Kong scene, how do you find it different to the Australian scene? I guess back in Hong Kong, it was probably nice because everything was really centralized, everything's close. Now you're in Perth, which, Australia's a big place. Yeah, how do you find the scene in Australia versus how it was in Hong Kong?
Well, I mean, there isn't much of a trail running community in Perth. I mean, it's very, very small. The trail races that we have here could be like road races on gravel. Um,
Hmm.
it's not really like, the same runners that would do a 5K on the roads would do a 10K on the trail. So there isn't much difference between them. Um, so I feel like where in Hong Kong, you can really see the difference between the road runners and the trail runners. It's separate groups.
Yeah,
Where in Australia, it's kind of all mixed in, and not many people do trail races. So trail races are very uncompetitive. And then there's a lot of good athletes here, but they don't really race in Perth. Um, like the Perth Marathon last year was won in to third in by a
Okay.
local guy. There's probably 5 or 6 guys in Perth that can run sub 220, but they don't really race too much in Perth. So there is a high levels athletes here. They don't really race much here, so it's a bit, yeah, it's kind of a weird position. It's a good place for training. It's really bad for racing, where Hong Kong, is incredible for racing, is incredible for training. But then the level I feel in Hong Kong is a bit lower. So I
Okay.
think there's, yeah, community wise, Hong Kong is incredible. I think the trail running community is incredible in Hong Kong. I enjoyed coming to races, and even when I moved back to Australia, I was still flying back to Hong Kong to do races because it was so much
Mm.
fun and pretty easy from Perth. Um, so I wish we had that in Australia, but yeah, I feel like my training has changed a little bit now, and I don't mind doing a bit more road running and trying to race on the trails, trying to find that balance.
Okay.
I think a lot of Hong Kongers are looking to travel again after a break of a couple of years. A lot of Hong Kong runners are actually going to Thailand by UTMB in early December, I believe. So when you're traveling from Hong Kong, let's say you're a mid pack runner, and maybe you don't have a coach, so you don't know all the tips and tricks, but you're paying a lot of money for a flight and then your hotel, your race entry fee. So you want to go and have a good experience, whether you're somewhere else in Asia or in Australia or Europe. So what are the things that say a mid-pack Hong Kong runner should think about in terms of physical conditioning or hydration or nutrition, considering the different conditions outside Hong Kong? I know that's a very broad question, but any tips on what are the key things people should think about?
I mean, I'm happy to have a stab first if you want. Um, I guess, with these sorts of things, it's really just trying to understand what you signed up for. So, what's the distance? What's the terrain? Is it going to be, is it lots of climbing, or is there anything, quite specific about the course? And then I think, the best thing you can do is really try and, gear your training towards that, and make sure you've got the right specificity. You're training for, that particular race. So if it's longer distance, you want some longer distance runs, because at the end of the day, if you train well and you've prepared in the right way, you should have a better, a better race. I think there's probably, as you said, quite a few people from Hong Kong going. So reach out amongst your friends. Just swap some ideas that you've got. Try to get together and do some longer training runs together. I think all of those things would probably help come when it comes to race day.
Yeah, I'll probably just add a small thing, which is probably you want to stay away from some of the stairs, because I mean Hong Kong is pretty special
Yeah.
with the stairs. So if your course doesn't have any stairs, it's a different impact on the body, especially on the downhills. Um, so I think that you want to do a bit more specific training for your race. I mean, the thing that I really like about Hong Kong is actually the stairs, because I feel like I got so strong on the stairs while living in Hong Kong, and I actually like running up and down the stairs. But then you go race somewhere else, it's not the same. So you want to make sure you put enough time aside and train, especially for the downhills that are like usual downhills, which are not stairs.
Yeah, really good point.
And just how different is the heat? I mean, if you compare Western Australia versus Hong Kong, they're both warm climates, but low humidity versus high humidity. I mean, that must change things a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Western Australia or Perth is a lot drier. We have a fairly cool summer, which kind of, sorry, cool winter that goes we're pretty much in November right now, and it was probably like 8 degrees last night.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so it's, yeah, fairly cool. But then summer is really hot, but it's dry. So you know, the group that I train with, they train like at 4:30 every single afternoon, even if it's 37, 38 degrees. But it's still doable because it's not that humid. Where in Hong Kong, you go out, you know, in the summer, it's tough to do anything longer than 30 minutes because, you're just drenched. So it's a different kind of adaptation where your body, you got to replace those liquids back into your body, where here you just got to try and cool off and try and finish the session like quicker. Where in Hong Kong, like once you sweat an X amount of liters out of your body, you're not going to get back, and it takes you a lot longer to recover. So I mean, even while I was living in Hong Kong, we would try and leave Hong Kong in summer for at least a few months because I felt like it was draining on the body, especially if you try and like do 2 sessions a day. Um, so yeah, it's a lot different. I think that Hong Kong is an incredible place to train in winter because it's dry and nice and cool. But summer, it's tough because even though training in heat and humidity is good, because obviously you're working harder and all that, it might be a bit too much where you're trying to like, back up day after day, do long runs and stuff like that. So I think that especially with a lot of races in Europe that happen in the Hong Kong summer or the end of the Hong Kong summer, it's really tough to get ready for them where you have to train in that heat and humidity. It's a lot easier training in the Australian summer, that's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe almost sort of jumping back to your time in Hong Kong. What do you miss most about the race season or the race scene? And clearly, yeah, the last 2.5 years has been sort of very different, and we're still very slowly getting back to normal, and hopefully we do get back to normal. But yeah, what was it that you missed about the Hong Kong race scene?
Obviously,
You did all the race.
the main thing is the trails. Like the Hong Kong's
Yeah.
got some incredible trails, and even after being there for 5 years, I've sometimes will go to races and see new trails, which was kind of beautiful. Where here, all the trails are fairly similar.
Mhm.
Nice trails, but there's not much elevation, so you don't get views. It's a very closed kind of trail. Where in Hong
Yep.
Kong, you get a lot of open, beautiful trails. So that's probably the main thing that I miss is those trails. And obviously the challenge of running up and down. Like you don't even like. I remember in Hong Kong when I was racing, you wouldn't even look at your watch because it didn't really matter the pace. Where in Australia, like, all right, this is a flat trail, I should be running at X pace. So it
Yeah.
was nice to kind of just be part of the race, not trying to kind of run on pace. Um, and obviously the accessibility of trails where I drove this morning 35 minutes to get to the trails, drove back.
Oof. Wow.
That's a lot of driving for like, a very basic trail. Like, it's not like it's a 1,000 meter climb that I'm driving to. It's a flat trail, literally. Um,
Yep.
and definitely the racing. Like, I think the races here are getting bigger, but still not like Hong Kong scale. So I like big races. Like I think it's nice doing smaller races sometimes, but also sometimes when you get to a race here and there's like 20 people at the start line, kind of motivates you a little bit less. Where I
Yep.
think naturally in Hong Kong, even if the race is not that competitive, but there's 500 people at the start line, there's a different atmosphere. There's a different atmosphere at the finish line. So like it's a little bit more rewarding, I guess, finishing a race when there's a bigger group of trail runners around you. Um, but yeah, it's a lot better in Perth right now than what it was when I left Perth. So when I left Perth for Hong Kong, there was hardly any races. Not much to do here in terms of trail running. Not many people running trails. It got a lot better, but still not to the point that Hong Kong was back in 2016, 17, 18, I guess, which was the high kind of times of Hong Kong trail running.
Yeah.
Obviously, it dropped off a little bit with the protests and obviously the pandemic, but there was a time where Hong Kong was the place to be. Um, and I felt like it was Hong Kong and Chamonix were the two kind of central places. There's probably a couple of other places right now where runners are kind of gathering, like Germany. Zugspitze became like a bit of a hub for like German and Austrian runners. And a few other places in Europe where before that it felt like it was only Hong Kong and Chamonix, really.
Yeah.
I think between the two of you, in terms of all the large races in Hong Kong, whether it be North Face 100, Translantau, Hong Kong 100, did I say Nine Dragons? I'm sure there's you know some others as well. But between all the two of you for all the big races, you've probably won all of them, and you've probably competed in all of those races multiple times over as well. So when you look back between that period, like 2014 to 2019, any particular sweet memories or experiences that you cherish the most? I'm sure for John, like winning Nine Dragons was right up there. Um, but yeah, particular highlights, memories, things that you look back on fondly, will tell your grandkids about. John?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the Nine Dragons. Just, I think the that sense of achievement at the end of a race, it's pretty proportional to just how much you dug deep and how much you put in. And for me, just that was just an incredible, just going into the pain cave and just staying there, for the Saturday, then for the Sunday, racing guys like Kazafumi who just sort of pushed me all the way. And just being able to see my family at the finish line. I mean, that's just something that really stands out for me. The fact that my good friend Steve Carr was the race director, and it was his baby, and he'd grown it into this sort of big race around Asia. So yeah, that one I think is a highlight for me. I don't know. I guess with Vlad, yeah, he's probably won. I stopped counting. It's probably 50 or 60 races in Hong Kong, so he's probably got a lot to choose from. But yeah, I'll throw it over to Vlad.
I mean, I think for me, being back then sponsored by the North Face, it was always the North Face races that were, well organized, usually fairly competitive. So I definitely enjoyed them. The North Face in Hong Kong is probably my favorite race. I did it like 6 years in a row. Um, I don't know if it's ever coming back, but hopefully it does. But I think for me, that whole time while I was in Hong Kong and just racing consistently, like all the races, like I thought there's so many special races in Hong Kong, and just being out there like week after week. Like obviously John likes to race, I like to race, so we did a lot of races, and
Mm.
for me it's just that period of racing so much, and different trails and stuff like that. I wouldn't pick a specific race. um, I just hope that Hong Kong can get back to that point where trail running is such a big part of culture there, and I think there was a point where a lot of people would travel to Hong Kong for races, so hopefully we can get to the point that happens again, because I want to go back to Hong Kong and race, and hopefully that is going to be sooner than later. But yeah, for me those 5 years of racing was so much fun, and yeah, probably 80 or 90 races in those 5 years, because I felt like I was a kid in a
Yeah,
candy store. Just every single week I would do a race because it was so much fun.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, it does look like we're getting
Hey,
bananas back. So, baby steps. We do hope we get
yeah, I
back
don't know if
to
you've heard about that,
normal.
Vlad.
You
Yeah,
get
we
Oh yeah, the
well,
bananas are allowed again. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very baby steps. You're allowed to have Yeah, you're allowed to have 240 people eating indoors, no
Yeah.
PCR tests at a banquet. But yeah, for whatever reason, the authorities are down on people eating at checkpoints in country parks in solo races. Anyway, that's where
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah, I mean, it is sad to
Anyway,
see, because like my memories of Hong Kong are so different than the last 3 years. Obviously we left in 2019. It's like a long time already. So I mean, I'm happy with those good memories that I had about Hong Kong and racing in Hong Kong. It's sad to see what's happening right now, but I also think it's probably maybe a year away from getting back to normal, hopefully. Even
Yeah,
though I'm sure we've all been saying that for the last 2 years. Um, but yeah, hopefully does come um, back to normal.
hopefully, we'll see you back in Hong Kong again, Vlad, for some big races. Just a final question, I guess. Like after the World Champs next week, as exciting as that is, like any particular future goals in terms of running, but also for both of you, you've branched into the business side of the sport. Like John as co-founder of T8 and Vlad being the man behind Bix. So, future goals, either running wise or just for your involvement in the sport in general.
Do you want me to
All
start,
right,
John?
Vlad,
yeah,
first.
sure, go for it, Vlad.
I mean, like, look, I know that John is 44 and is doing like amazing things in trail running. I don't know if I'll be at that point where I'm 44. Hopefully I am, but also like, it does take a lot on family time, self time, your health and stuff like that. So, I feel like I got a couple more years and I really want to give it a good shot. Um, Before I kind of go into this enjoyment state of running in general. It doesn't have to be trail running only. So I feel like I have I'm 35 now, so I feel like maybe another 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years of the discipline of running twice a day, the discipline of a lot of sacrifice, family, self-sacrifice, friends, and all that. So I feel like, in the next few years, I would really like to do well in some races, because I have some goals for like races in Europe. So I know that I need to get serious about my training before it's too late, as the level just keeps on getting harder and harder. Um, and then, yeah, with the business, I think just keep moving forward with it. It's definitely taking up a lot more time than before. And there's exciting, kind of new products that we're going to try and bring out next year, which means for me that I'll probably be involved in the sport a long after, I'm competitive or semi-competitive. Um, so yeah, hopefully a couple of good races, try and run a sub 220 marathon before I get too old. Um, and then, try and be involved in the sport, but at a fun kind of place where, just go out there and enjoy the race. A lot of the races that I've done over the years, I've went all out, and, I could only see like 1 meter in front of me. Wherever that might be, we might be running in the Alps in Europe, or some places in Hong Kong that are beautiful. I'll be just looking straight down, focus on the race. So it would be nice to do some races where I'm just there for fun and enjoy the views and the atmosphere, and not just kind of think about performance. So I think that that's kind of the next few years. That's the goal.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you're 35. You've got so much time left, lad, and I think as you get older, maybe you just got to go longer. As your fast twitch muscles turn into
Yeah.
slow twitch muscles, yeah, maybe you sort of get the longer races. But yeah, just how strong you are right now, and yeah, I feel like you've got more than a few years. But yeah,
No, I
we'll
mean,
we'll, see. We'll see.
no, I mean, like obviously there's runners that do well, like you at 44, and there's Olympic runners out there at 44. Um, but I just don't know if I'll be able to like commit as much.
Yeah,
Um,
fair
I
enough.
have this addictive personality that I go all in, or I kind of like don't really go all in.
Yep.
So I feel like I'm at that point where I am running twice a day right now, and I can do that for a few years, but I can also start feeling it on my body a little bit. It's not the same as 5, 6 years ago, where I could just, do 20K every single day and like wake up like nothing happened. Just a bit more kind of stiff in the mornings, still doing the same routine, same diet, same rest, but just the body just gets a bit older. So, and at the same time, like, it is taking time away from family and friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit selfish. I think that it was a bit easier to justify when I had the North Face sponsorship, where I can kind of go, hey, look, go to my wife, like, look, I am getting paid for this, so I should be
Gotta
running
let me do
twice
it.
a day. Yeah, I should be running
Yeah.
twice a day. But then since COVID hit, that sponsorship stopped. It's a bit hard to justify, hey, why are you running twice a day? You can maybe just run once a day. So yeah, I think that that's kind of the mindset that I've been in, and probably like a year ago, I did think about you know really taking a big step back from running and just kind of enjoying it, and maybe doing some triathlons and stuff like that. Um, but then I also thought this is pretty much my last chance to try and do well, and have a couple of memorable results that I'll be proud of. So I kind of said, all right, well, I'm going to trying to go all in for a couple of years. So
Yep.
in that kind of a sense, I feel like I won't be able to sacrifice so much for so long, unless, who knows, maybe I'll get another sponsorship that will be worth it. But yeah, I'm at that point where I'm like, is this really worth the investment of 20 hours of training a week? Like,
Yeah.
being
I mean,
real.
for what it's worth, I mean, I do hear some really good things about you as a coach, and I feel like, yeah, with the Bix, you've got a really good product there. I'm a big fan of the active, and actually, the last 6 weeks as I've been doing doubles every day, like I've had the Bix recovery, and that's really helped me in terms of, yeah, feeling good to go at it again the next day. So I think you've got a really good product there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think just coming back to comparing us, I think that John is a little bit more established, with his job, having like a proper job, where for me, I need to kind of maybe take a step back from running and put a bit more effort into the business so I can establish that a bit more. Um, so I think that that's kind of where, I feel like some of the sacrifice doesn't always pay off, especially like, when you are putting few months of training where you sacrifice a lot and then you have few bad
Mm,
races and you kind of start questioning yourself, is this really worth
yeah.
it? Where I want to put more time into bigs, but then I'm kind of going, wow, I only have like few years left of my own running, and running being such a selfish sport, and being a little bit selfish by training so much, you kind of question yourself a little bit. So that's why I kind of, yeah, I'm at that point where I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's all they're all really valid points, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess on my side, yeah, post Worlds, it's yeah, the I guess the running goal is probably Asia Trail Master. We've got the championship final December 17 at the Mount Apo Sky Race. Get to race guys like sort of Christian Jorgensen and Jeff Campbell, who are just in amazing shape right now. So yeah, try and not get smashed too hard by those two guys, and yeah, Sashi and Milton and a few of the others. And then I guess on the business side, it's yeah, it's always hard, just juggling the full time job, and that's good because it does give you sort of that base salary, which yeah, lets pays the rent and everything else. It's nice to have that stable income. But yeah, obviously, the T8 side, we're starting to push into Europe. Got a few new products that we're looking to launch in the next year. Fortunately, I've got a really good partner there. It's a really good team as well. So, those guys are doing a great job. Yeah, so yeah, just still some more goals on the running side and the business side, but yeah, there's never enough hours in the day. And as Vlad sort of points out, yeah, you get to a point where yeah, you got to spend more time with the family because yeah, I mean the kids are at such a fun age, and yeah, you're never really going to get that time back.
How long do you think you're going to be kind of pushing the limits of running and putting that many hours into your training? Like,
I think for me, I've just in the last few years, I've just gone into like proper off season, on season, and so for off season, I just let it go for 6 months, and yeah, I sort of put on some weight, I get slow, and then yeah, there's just a big ramp up heading into the next season. So I'm sort of taking 6 months off a year, and yeah, just got a lot of work to do whenever the races start coming up again.
yeah, but you think that's sustainable for another 3, 4, 5, 10 years?
No, no. I mean, I'm getting older, and you realize that the body just can't keep doing it, and you know, do I really want to do longer and longer races? Because ultimately, that means longer training as well. So yeah, I'm probably going to get to a point where yeah, it turns into fun. It's something that you enjoy doing. But I think for now, while I'm still a bit competitive, I feel like I've almost got a responsibility to myself just to keep pushing it as long as I can. But there'll be a time when yeah, the body can't do it anymore, and that'll be a good time to just start to cruise a bit more.
We
Yeah,
should
makes sense.
perhaps,
And do you
we perhaps
feel, oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say we should perhaps just mention that John, you have won 2 races in the last 2 weeks in Hong Kong. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Vlad.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I was
yeah,
going to say the only reason I'm running a lot shorter is because I think that long races take so much more training time. And it's not
yeah,
only obviously the training time, it's the recovery after. I feel like when I do a really long run, it takes me a few hours to get back to like normal life. And like, I don't think it's fair kind of doing a 5 hour run, coming home, and then, not spending time with the family because I'm like, like a zombie on the couch for another 2 or 3 hours. Where I think with shorter races, I feel like, all right, well, long run might be only 2 hours, so half an hour, and I'm fine. So that's probably the main reason why I stopped doing some of those longer races, um, because I feel like it does take a lot more out of your time.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, we'll all be watching keenly how you go in the World Champs next weekend. So, on behalf of myself, but also the audience, all the best for that. I'm sure it'll be a great experience. And also for you, John, at the Asia Trailmaster finals at Mount Apo in the Philippines in mid December. So, thank you both so much for your reflections on trail running in Hong Kong and looking forward to next week. I'm sure your friends and family are all very proud of you, and we look forward and anticipate following you and seeing how you go.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank
very much,
you.
Steve. Thanks very much, Vlad.
Thanks both.